We all understand the type of climate that we're dealing with. We're dealing with multiple offer situations.
I'd love to know sort of what's your why? What makes you tick? Why are you so successful?
Have a dialogue with your lawyer. Have a dialogue with your agent.
Both sort of passionate about sort of what we do.
Again, vet your agent to make sure that they're experienced and they're local. I like that idea.
No excuse to miss it on Saturdays from 8 to 9.
That's right.
WBZ.
And now, the show that gives you the latest and most relevant housing market news. Real Estate Radio Boston with financial expert Rick Shearer and legal professional Ali Alavi.
You've got some great experience with working with adjusters and really fighting for your clients to make sure that they get everything that they need to get in order to put Humpty Dumpty back together again.
Yeah, and it's like I try to not use the word fighting. It's usually more working cooperatively with them. Most of, like any profession, most of the professionals, they're just looking to do their job and document what's happened in the property, what needs to be done, and there's no, as long as you're on the same page. If their scope of work is the same as the scope of work that I'm pricing, then I'm going to be within 5% of the claim.
Right.
Now, do you recommend that someone utilize public adjusters and so work with a public adjuster to talk to the adjuster that the insurance company will assign? And how does that really work?
There's a time and place for everything, so to speak. So not every claim will warrant a public adjuster, and a good public adjuster will look at a situation and say, I can't really service you here. I can't justify my fee because of the nature of the claim.
Do you find yourself making a recommendation of a public adjuster depending on the scope of the project and the assessment of the insurance company's adjuster?
I think it depends on the situation. If sometimes the client or the homeowner, the property owner, they've got a good handle on what's going on. Like, let's say you're a landlord, you have no contents. Really all you're looking for is loss of rent and then the physical aspect of putting the place back together. Where is the adjuster, the public adjuster, going to bring value to that claim for that client? So they may already know that because they might have been through it before. Like I said, it's
case by case.
It's situational. Yeah, absolutely.
One of the things that I know you specialize in, and again, I think is sort of niche-y, is condo developments. You can understand that when there's a claim, there's usually there's a bunch of different units involved. There's an association involved. Talk a little bit about your expertise around the condos, issues with condos.
Well, I think with that is that each individual unit is owned individually. So at the end of the day, most of the property managers that I know, a lot of them will, when the general adjuster has made the claim, they'll have each piece will be broken out, and then they'll figure out the numbers and the money, and then the association through their manager will determine, okay, here's your portion of the deductible if it's applicable, and then here's your check.
Right.
Now, the homeowner can then do what they want, and they can hire who they want. In some cases, I understand that there's an all-in policy type situation where now the association hires the contractor, and they're going to do all the work for everybody. So that's also situational.
That may not know, all-in is, we're talking about all-in, wall-in master insurance policies, and those are policies that essentially cover the inside of the unit as well as the outside of the unit. That's what you're referring to.
Yeah, when there's a disaster like a water or fire damage.
Right. I think it's important for the listeners to appreciate. I mean, if you're part of a board, if you are a property manager and are dealing with insurance scenarios or perhaps are going to be faced with sometime in the near future, to use you as a resource. Don't you agree?
Yeah, I can be a resource, and I try to do that with for any client in any situation, whether it's a residential client looking to do a remodel or a renovation. I've got resources, like I've brought them in here before, between kitchen and bath designers, architects. Right. We always joke, I know a guy. Yeah. Sometimes it's a girl. Yeah. But over the years, I've developed the resources that's what I think I need to be to my clients. If I can't do it, I probably will know someone who can.
Keeping Current Matters, we subscribe to it, Rick and I. They came out with a report this morning that talked about the average days on the market with regards to nationwide. Mm-hmm. And they're talking about the fact that the average days on the market is 47 days as opposed to 57 days when you look at year-over-year changes or something to that effect. That may be wrong. And overall, I think Mass falls under the 45 to 60 days as far as the average number of days that a property is on the market. Cambridge, Somerville, completely different story. The inventory, I mean, I think as of a year ago, the inventory was 0.2 months. I mean, essentially, it takes 0.2 months for you to be able to exhaust all the inventory there is in the market. What's the days on the market in Cambridge now, and how are you dealing with that with regards to your sellers and buyers? I mean, that's such a challenge.
It's pretty insane. Properties listed on, like, say, a Wednesday. There's open houses on the weekend. Offer deadline Monday or Tuesday, and majority of those places are getting multiple bids and are gone. So the stats say that the average days on market for so far this year are 37. I don't necessarily think that's for the majority of the property. You get some outliers that'll sit there that have been on the market for 120 days because they're 200 grand overpriced. People don't sort of understand that.
Right.
But is that 37 days from the time that it gets listed until it's under agreement, or is it until it's closed?
Well, so it's till it's under agreement. So this is interesting. So the MLS has two ways to put a property under agreement. You can say it's contingent,
Right.
which says that it's contingent upon a home inspection or a PNS or a
Finance,
mortgage.
right.
But when you do contingent, it doesn't stop the days on market until you get under agreement. And there aren't rules that say you have to say contingent or under agreement. So realtors operate in two different worlds.
I gotcha.
I go under agreement the second that my property
Is under agreement.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Yeah, why go contingent? I mean,
So
it's just-
that skews the dates. So if you're doing under agreements in Cambridge, I would say 90% of the properties in the spring are going under in the first 7 days. So this is a little bit skewed. The reality is they come and they go. Boom, it's quick.
How do you help your buyers? I mean, that's one of the things I spent all weekend long this weekend. I think I talked to 11 different real estate agents this weekend to talking to listing agents about getting my clients' deal approved and get them warm and fuzzy about their financing. I've never really had to do that in the past, but it's been very successful, which has been great. How are you setting your buyers up for disappointment over and over and over again because the market is so crazy?
I've been pretty lucky. I haven't in the last few years had too many people that have lost out more than a few times.
Okay.
I'm pretty aggressive when I sit down with them from the beginning. I give them a plan straight out. I'm like, okay, you got to write a personal letter that tells you who you are. You got to pull on the heartstrings of the seller. You got to send me a little video of you and your wife and your child. It's only going to be 30 seconds long, but you're going to say, we've been looking for so long, we've lost out. You're going to pull on that heartstrings as well. You're going to get a local lender, because I know as a listing agent, if I get a lender from Texas I've never heard of, that buyer immediately I'm nervous with. So you get a local lender like yourself, that goes a long way. And there are a lot of things that you can do within the offer filling out itself, not aside from the price.
Right.
Obviously, the price is means a lot to a lot of people, but you got to find out what the seller's needs are. You got to find out, do they need a use and occupancy? Do they need to stay there longer? Do they need to close sooner? Are deposit amounts important to them? So in Cambridge, this was last year, I had a deal where usually put $1,000 down at offer and 5% at PNS. But we had someone that put 100 grand at offer, 100 grand at PNS, right? Something really outside the box, right? Blew the seller away. Wasn't the highest offer, but that confidence, in that particular person who's willing to take that risk. When you're up against someone just doing 1,000 and 5%, if you're within a little bit of money here and there, there are some things you can do to sort of wow a seller.
We are excited to have Mr. Michael Baker in studio, our estate planning attorney, who is on every other month, and to bring us some great information. And obviously, with the death of Prince,
We didn't plan this, by the way. I mean, it just happened.
Prince's
and
death.
then, no, I
We
mean,
didn't plan
your
that.
appearance here, for God's sakes. No, we're talking about the timing is pretty unique.
yeah, well, we get a lot to talk about because he was a mess as far as the estate planning side of things go.
No, it was revealed this week that he died without a will. So
Wow.
he didn't have any. He had some siblings. We can go into that a little bit more about the difference in relationships between people and what they should expect to receive. But he didn't have children. He was divorced a few times. So the real question is, where is the estate going, and how many times is it going to be divided? And
How could this have been avoided? I mean, we keep talking about he didn't have a will. And we've, in previous episodes, have said will is not just enough. So had he a will, then we would know what his intentions were and what he wanted the intellectual property left to, either the full sister, a charity, who knows? We just don't know what the intent of the decedent is at this point.
right.
But the will in and of itself wouldn't have been good enough, right? I mean, to be able to obviate this exposure of tax liability.
Well, it's typically you do multiple layers and assess the situation of a person. So a will would direct his property to be clear, perhaps if he didn't want to include all of his siblings equally. Perhaps he wanted to favor one over the other. I don't know. He probably had nieces and nephews. that perhaps he wanted to direct his property to, and if his siblings are kind of taking in front of them, maybe that's not an option.
Right, exactly. Or perhaps charities. You may
Or
have thought.
charities, exactly.
Right.
Now, from a tax planning, he obviously has a major tax issue. Even though his estate may be valued, lower than as of the date of the death, and may have generated a significant amount of revenue. Now, the revenue more than likely is going to generate income taxes now to his estate.
Right.
Income taxes to an estate are very compressed. So the highest, and I'm making up numbers here, but just to illustrate a point, for a married couple, you wouldn't hit the highest tax bracket till about $450,000 to $500,000 of income.
Mm-hmm.
For an estate, it's $12,000. You hit that.
Boy.
40%.
Okay, so he's hit that already, right? I think 3 seconds after he died, I think he hit that with his
Not even
downloads.
that long.
But the other thing too is I'm sure this guy, maybe he did, but if his estate was worth $300 million, he probably didn't have $150 million sitting in some account there liquid to hand over to the government. And I think 9 months from now, typically his assets aren't liquid because they look at everything.
No, and that's where the planning really comes into play, to provide that liquidity and plan for that big event where you're going to be writing a check in 9 months or facing these serious penalties that come up after. I mean, they're not going to wait around. You can wait to actually file the return. You get some more time to provide that information to validate what taxes due, but you have to make an estimated payment pretty close to that amount. And if there's a shortfall, then you're subject to interest and penalty.